The ship drifted through the quiet void of space, away from the wreckage of the asteroid field. The enemy ships were gone, but Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before more came. He turned his chair around and faced the three alien women. "All right, no more running. Tell me what's really going on." Nyx crossed her arms, her silver eyes burning. "We already told you. We were part of a secret project." Zora sighed, adjusting a small device on her wrist. "Not just any project, Nyx. He needs to understand." She looked at Ethan. "Do you know about the Galactic Order?" Ethan frowned. "Yeah, the so-called peacekeepers of the galaxy. They make the rules, but only for their own benefit." Vela nodded. "They control everything, and they fear one thing more than anything else." Ethan leaned forward. "Which is?" Nyx's voice was sharp. "Humanity." Ethan blinked. "Wait, what?" Zora tapped her wrist device, and a holographic map appeared. It showed the vast galaxy, with different colored zones for different alien factions. Humanity's territory was small compared to the others. "We were part of Project Unity," Zora explained, "a secret mission to form the first multi-species squad, proving that humans could stand alongside the greatest warriors, hackers, and psionics in the galaxy." Vela's golden tattoos glowed softly. "We trained together. We fought together. And we proved the humans were not weaker or less advanced than the Galactic Order claimed." Nyx's fists clenched. "And that's why they tried to kill us." Ethan's jaw tightened. It made sense. The Galactic Order had always downplayed humanity's strength, keeping them isolated and under control. If the truth got out, that humans were just as capable as the strongest alien races, it could change everything. "You were supposed to disappear," Ethan muttered, "but something went wrong." Zora nodded. "Someone tried to save us." She pointed at the hologram, highlighting an area deep in uncharted space. "Our escape pods were supposed to be delivered here, a hidden base, but someone intercepted the ship, dumped it in that junkyard, and wiped the records." Ethan rubbed his chin. "Which means someone out there still wants you alive." Nyx smirked. "And someone out there still wants us dead." Ethan sighed. "Great. So what's the plan?" Vela's eyes locked onto his. "We find the base. We find out who saved us. And we finish what we started." Ethan grinned. "All right. Sounds like a challenge." He turned back to the controls, setting a new course. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. Ethan Drake wiped the sweat from his brow as he walked through the massive junkyard on Ganymede. The place smelled like rust, oil, and old metal. Exactly the kind of place where a man like him could find treasure hidden in trash. He had spent years fixing broken ships, flipping them for profit, and dreaming of owning something truly special. "Over here," growled old Garrett, the junk dealer. He was a short, grumpy man with a robotic arm and a bad attitude. He led Ethan toward a half-buried spaceship covered in dust and vines. Ethan frowned. The ship was ugly, a small, outdated freighter with dents, scratches, and missing panels. The engines looked dead, the hull was cracked, and the cockpit windows were so dirty he couldn't even see inside. "This?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. Garrett smirked. "Looks like junk, yeah, but the core's still intact, and the frame's solid. You got the skills, boy. You can make this thing fly again." Ethan walked around the ship, running his fingers over the hull. Something about it felt different. The design wasn't familiar, like it didn't belong to any human fleet he knew. But the price was unbelievably low, and that made him suspicious. "Why so cheap?" Ethan asked. Garrett shrugged. "Just want it gone. You buying or not?" Ethan hesitated. His gut told him there was more to this ship than just rust and broken parts. But a challenge excited him. If he could restore it, he might finally have a ship of his own, not just another fixer-upper to sell. "Fine," he said, handing over the credits. "She's mine." Garrett grinned and slapped the ship's hull. "Good luck, kid. You're gonna need it." As Ethan stepped inside, the air was stale and cold. Dust floated in the dim light as he moved toward the cockpit. The controls were ancient, the screens cracked, but the main power switch was still intact. He took a deep breath and flipped it. The ship hummed to life. Lights flickered, and the air vents released a soft hiss. Suddenly, a hidden door in the back of the ship unlocked with a loud click. Ethan spun around, his heart pounding. He hadn't seen that door before. Slowly, he stepped toward it and pressed the panel. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing 3 large cryopods inside. They were covered in frost, and inside each pod was a woman, beautiful, alien, and completely unconscious. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What the hell had he just bought? Before he could react, the cryopods beeped, and the ice began to melt. The women were waking up. The growl echoed through the dark station. Ethan froze, gripping his blaster tight. Nyx stepped back, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Okay, that didn't sound friendly. Zora quickly tapped her wrist device, trying to bring emergency lights online. Vela stood still, her glowing tattoos pulsing softly. It's watching us. Ethan's breath hitched. What is? A low snarl came from the corridor ahead, then another from the left. Multiple sounds. They weren't alone. Suddenly, Zora's device beeped. The backup lights flickered on, casting a weak yellow glow over the station. And then they saw it. A shadow moved in the hallway. Long limbs, razor-sharp claws scraping against metal. Its eyes, empty, white voids, locked onto them. It let out a horrible screech and charged. "Move E," Ethan shouted. Nyx lunged forward, meeting the creature head-on with a powerful punch. Her fist collided with its chest, sending it skidding backward, but it barely flinched. Zora fired her blaster. Bright red bolts struck its body, but the creature absorbed the impact, its dark skin rippling like liquid. Vela gasped. It's adapting. The creature lunged again, claws slashing at Nyx. She barely dodged, rolling to the side. Ethan aimed his blaster at the ceiling and fired at a gas pipe. Boom! The pipe ruptured, releasing a blast of steam. The creature shrieked, stumbling back, its skin burning from the heat. "Heat works," Ethan shouted. "We need fire or energy weapons." Zora quickly adjusted her blaster settings, switching to plasma rounds. The creature snarled, then suddenly split apart, its body turning into black smoke. It rushed past them, reforming behind them. Ethan's stomach dropped. It can teleport. Nyx grabbed a fallen metal rod and swung hard, slamming it into the creature's side. It howled, but instead of attacking, it suddenly retreated into the vents. Silence. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. What the hell was that? Zora's face was pale. A voidborn. Vela's voice was soft but serious. "It shouldn't be here." Ethan's stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" Zora took a deep breath. Voidborn are weapons, bioengineered monsters. They were supposed to be locked away, deep in restricted space. Nyx wiped blood from her arm, scowling. Well, someone let it out. Vela's golden eyes glowed softly, and it wasn't alone. Ethan clenched his jaw. They needed to get out. Fast. But as they turned to leave, the station's speakers crackled to life. A weak, broken voice whispered through the speakers. "Help. Us." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Someone was still alive, and they were running out of time. Ethan's heart pounded as he gripped the controls. The ship tilted sharply, diving into the asteroid field at full speed. Huge space rocks tumbled past, some as big as buildings. Behind them, the mercenary warships followed, weaving through the debris like hungry wolves. Zora's hands flew over the console. "They're gaining on us." Nyx clenched her fists. "Let me at them." But she had no weapons, no armor, nothing but her instincts. That didn't stop her from wanting a fight. Vela's glowing eyes flickered. "Stay focused," she murmured, reaching out with her mind. The air around her shimmered faintly. Ethan gritted his teeth. Hold on. He jerked the controls, sending the ship into a tight spiral around a massive asteroid. One of the enemy ships followed, too closely. Boom! A huge rock slammed into the mercenary ship, shattering its shields. It spun out of control, crashing into another asteroid. Nix let out a sharp laugh. One down. But the other two ships weren't fooled. They adjusted their course, speeding up. Zora's cybernetic eye flashed. We need a way out, now. Ethan scanned the radar. There, a narrow gap between two giant asteroids. A path just big enough for their ship. But there was a problem. It's too small, Zora warned. We might not fit. Ethan smirked. We're gonna fit. Nix and Zora exchanged glances. Vila simply nodded. I trust you. Ethan punched the thrusters. The ship raced forward, heading straight for the gap. The enemy ships hesitated, too afraid to follow. They veered away, trying to find another route. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Come on, just a little more. The ship squeezed through, scraping the edges with a terrible screech. Sparks flew. Panels rattled. But they made it. The enemy ships weren't so lucky. One tried to follow but miscalculated, slamming into the asteroid with a fiery explosion. Nix cheered. That's two. Ethan exhaled. One left. But before they could celebrate, a deep rumble shook the ship. Zora's eyes widened. The explosion caused a chain reaction. Asteroid shifting. Ethan looked at the radar. The asteroid field was collapsing, closing in on them. Vela's voice was calm. We need to move. Now. Ethan didn't wait. He yanked the controls, sending the ship into a wild dive, just as a massive asteroid smashed together where they had just been. The last mercenary ship wasn't so lucky. It got crushed between the rocks. Nix smirked. All clear. Ethan exhaled. They had survived. But he knew this wasn't over. Whoever sent those hunters wouldn't stop. And now Ethan was part of the fight. He turned to the three alien women. All right. Tell me everything. Ethan's pulse raced as the distorted voice echoed through the ship's speakers. Surrender the fugitives, or be destroyed. A red warning light flashed on the control panel. Zora's fingers moved quickly across the console, scanning the incoming signal. Her green cybernetic eye glowed as she analyzed the data. One ship, heavily armed. Approaching fast, she reported. Ethan clenched his fists. Who are they? Nix, the blue-skinned warrior, growled as she peered at the screen. Mercenary hunters. Hired killers. Her hand hovered near her waist, where a weapon should have been, but she had nothing. Vila, the violet-skinned psionic, closed her glowing eyes and focused. Their minds are filled with greed and orders, she murmured. They want us alive, but they won't hesitate to kill you. Ethan's stomach twisted. Great, just my luck. Zora spun toward him. Your ship, can it fly? Ethan looked around. The ship was old, broken, and barely holding together. He hadn't even finished checking if the engines worked. But he had one rule when it came to survival. Never sit still when trouble finds you. He dashed to the pilot's seat and flicked the ignition switch. The ship rumbled. Metal groaned as the engines coughed to life. Hold on, Ethan muttered. He gripped the controls and slammed the thrusters. The ship lurched upward, shaking as dust and debris flew in all directions. Outside, a massive black warship appeared in the sky, its cannons glowing with energy. They're locking weapons on us, Zora shouted. Nix cursed. Move faster, human. Ethan gritted his teeth and yanked the controls. The ship tilted sharply, dodging the first barrage of plasma fire. Explosions rocked the junkyard below. One hit, and they were dead. We need a plan, he yelled. Zora's eyes flashed. Get me to the weapon systems. Ethan pointed toward the side panel. There, if they still work. Zora's fingers flew over the controls. come on," she muttered. Suddenly, the ship's old rusted cannons hummed to life. "Weapons online," she grinned. "Let's give them a surprise." The enemy ship fired again. Ethan twisted the controls, dodging just in time. Zora, fire. A blast of plasma shot from their ship, slamming into the enemy shields. The warship shook, but its shields held. Nyx pounded her fist against the wall. "We can't win this fight. We need to escape." Ethan's mind raced. The ship's hyperdrive was damaged. They needed a clear path to jump away. Vela's voice was soft but firm. "Trust me." She closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind. Suddenly, the enemy ship's lights flickered. The warship hesitated, as if something unseen was gripping its systems. "Now, Ethan." Vela gasped. Ethan slammed the hyperdrive button. The ship vanished into hyperspace. Ethan took a step back as the cryopods hissed, releasing clouds of cold mist into the air. His heart pounded. He had bought this ship thinking it was just an old wreck. But now 3 alien women were waking up right in front of him. The first pod opened with a sharp click. A tall woman with midnight blue skin and glowing silver eyes stepped forward, her body covered in a sleek, battle-worn suit. Her muscles were lean, her stance tense, like a warrior ready to fight. She looked at Ethan and narrowed her eyes. The second pod opened next. A woman with emerald green hair and cybernetic implants sat up, blinking rapidly as if processing information. Her fingers twitched, and Ethan noticed a small device in her hand, some kind of hacking tool. Finally, the third pod released a soft humming sound, and the last woman stepped out. She had violet skin, golden tattoos that shimmered on her arms, and eyes that glowed softly. Unlike the others, she seemed calm, her movements slow and graceful. Ethan raised his hands. "Hi." The blue-skinned woman reacted first. In a blink, she lunged, grabbing Ethan by the collar and slamming him against the wall. "Who are you?" she growled, her voice sharp and commanding. "Where are we?" Ethan struggled, his feet barely touching the ground. "I have bought this ship in a junkyard. I swear, I don't know what's going on." The green-haired woman tilted her head, her cybernetic eye scanning Ethan. "He's not lying," she muttered. "Brain activity suggests confusion. No signs of deception." The warrior released him with a grunt, and Ethan gasped for air. "Great, thanks. Love the warm welcome," he muttered, rubbing his neck. The violet-skinned woman stepped closer, studying Ethan with curiosity. "Human," she said softly. "We did not expect to see one so soon." Ethan frowned. "Soon? What do you mean? Who are you?" The 3 women exchanged glances. The blue-skinned warrior finally spoke. "I am Nyx of the Aetherian Empire," she said. "A soldier." "Zora," the green-haired woman added. "Hacker and tech specialist. Celestian Syndicate." The last woman gave a slight bow. "Vela, psionic adept of the lost Sci-Fi race." Ethan blinked. They weren't just random aliens. They were from 3 different powerful factions. What were they doing together? Before he could ask, the ship shook violently. The lights flickered, and an alarm blared from the control panel. "Incoming transmission," Zora announced, rushing to the console. Her fingers danced over the controls. A distorted voice crackled through the speakers. "Surrender the fugitives, or be destroyed." Ethan felt his stomach drop. Fugitives. What had he gotten himself into? Ethan gripped the controls, eyes locked on the map. Their destination, an uncharted sector deep in space, was still days away at full speed. The ship hummed softly, floating through the darkness. For the first time in hours, there were no enemies, no explosions, no wild chases. But Ethan knew this peace wouldn't last. Zora worked at the console, scanning for signals. "No signs of pursuit yet," she said. "But we should assume they're still looking for us." Nyx stretched, rolling her shoulders. "Let them come. I'm ready." Ethan smirked. With what weapons? Nick scowled. Tech. Details. Vela's soft voice cut through the tension. We should rest while we can. She wasn't wrong. They had barely slept since escaping the junkyard. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. Fine. I'll keep us on course. You all get some rest. Zora nodded, heading toward the sleeping quarters. Vela followed, moving with her usual quiet grace. Nix hesitated. Wake me if anything happens. Ethan chuckled. You'll be the first to know. With that, she disappeared down the hall. For a while, Ethan sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the endless stars. What had he gotten himself into? A few days ago, he was just a scavenger looking for parts. Now he was flying across the galaxy with 3 alien fugitives, being hunted by mercenaries, and heading straight into a mystery bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. Damn, my life got crazy fast. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, just for a moment. A few hours later, a sharp beeping sound woke Ethan up. His eyes snapped open. The ship's scanners had picked up something. He leaned forward. A signal. Weak, but steady. Zora's voice came from behind him. We're close. She and the others had returned, looking rested but alert. Nix peered at the radar. That's the signal from the base. Zora nodded. It matches the encryption code from our mission. Vela frowned slightly. Something feels off. Ethan didn't like that. Off how? Vela closed her eyes, focusing. There is life on the base, but it's faint. Scattered. Ethan's stomach twisted. Survivors. Zora checked the data. Possibly. But the energy levels are low. Something isn't right. Nix grinned. Only one way to find out. Ethan sighed. Yeah. Let's do this. He guided the ship toward the dark station ahead. It floated in the void, lights flickering dimly, as if it hadn't been powered fully in years. As they approached, a message suddenly appeared on the screen. Warning. Do not enter. Ethan swallowed. Well, that's not a good sign. The ship lurched violently as it entered hyperspace, shaking like it might fall apart at any second. Ethan gripped the controls, his knuckles turning white. The old freighter wasn't built for sudden jumps like this. Come on, girl, he muttered. Hold together. Behind him, Nix, Zora, and Vela steadied themselves. The emergency lights flickered, and sparks flew from one of the side panels. Zora checked the ship's system screen. Hyperdrive is overheating, she warned. If we don't drop out soon, we might explode. Ethan gritted his teeth. All right. Finding a safe spot now. He scanned the navigation system, looking for a place to land. There weren't many options. There, Vela pointed at the screen. A dead zone in the outer belt. No major patrols, no settlements. Ethan didn't like stopping in unknown territory, but they had no choice. He adjusted the ship's trajectory and prepared to exit hyperspace. The stars snapped back into view, and the ship jerked forward as they returned to normal space. Ahead, an asteroid field stretched across the void, massive rocks tumbling slowly through space. Ethan exhaled. At least there's no sign of those mercenaries. Nix crossed her arms. They won't give up easily. Whoever sent them wants us badly. Ethan turned to face them. All right, time for answers. Who are you really? Why are bounty hunters chasing you? The 3 women exchanged glances. Finally, Zora sighed and spoke first. We were part of a secret mission, she said. A project meant to create the first multi-species alliance team. A group that could prove humans and aliens could work together. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And that's illegal. Nix clenched her fists. Someone betrayed the project. They wanted it buried along with us. Vela nodded. We were placed in cryo to erase us, but for some reason, the ship never reached its destination. Ethan exhaled sharply. So, someone wants to make sure you're never found. Zora smirked. Exactly. And now you're stuck in this mess with us. Before Ethan could respond, the ship's warning alarm blared. His heart dropped. Zora's hands flew across the console. Multiple ships approaching. Fast. Ethan's stomach twisted. Damn it. They tracked us. Through the viewport, 3 black warships appeared from the shadows, their weapons glowing. A cold voice crackled over the comms. This is your last chance. Surrender the fugitives, or be destroyed. Nyx reached for a missing weapon, her eyes burning with rage. Zora tightened her jaw. Vela's golden tattoos shimmered faintly. Ethan looked at them, then at the enemy ships. He grinned. Surrender? Not happening. With a wild turn of the controls, he sent the ship diving into the asteroid field. The chase was on. Ethan stared at the warning message flashing on the screen. Warning. Du no te enter. A chill ran down his spine. The station ahead floated in the darkness, silent and broken. It was supposed to be a hidden base, a place of safety. But instead, it looked like a graveyard. Nyx leaned forward. Well, that's not creepy at all. Zora's cybernetic eye scanned the station. No major power signals. Only backup systems are running. Vela placed a hand on the console, closing her eyes. After a moment, she whispered, Something happened here. Something bad. Ethan exhaled. Great, just what we needed. Nyx smirked. Come on, we didn't fly all this way just to turn back. Let's check it out. Ethan shook his head. I have a bad feeling about this. Zora sighed. We all do. But this is our only lead. Ethan hesitated, then finally nodded. All right, we go in, but stay sharp. He guided the ship toward the docking bay. The station's doors were partially open, like something had forced them apart. Not a good sign. As the ship landed with a soft hiss, the lights flickered weakly. Nyx cracked her knuckles. Let's do this. Inside the station. The air was cold and stale. The walls were covered in burn marks and deep claw scratches. Ethan's fingers tightened around his blaster. What the hell happened here? Zora scanned the area. No signs of life. But there was a fight. Vela stepped forward, her golden tattoos glowing faintly. I feel something, like echoes of fear. Nyx scoffed. Great. Ghosts. Just what we needed. They moved cautiously through the dark corridors. Every step echoed loudly, making the silence feel even heavier. Then they saw it. A message scrawled on the wall in red paint. It got out. Ethan's blood ran cold. Zora's voice was tight. What got out? As if answering her, a distant noise echoed through the station. A deep, scraping sound. Nyx spun around, fists clenched. We are not alone. Ethan's instincts screamed at him. Back to the ship. Now. But before they could move, the lights cut out completely. And in the darkness, something growled.